Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to my channel. This is Ezreal the Scribe, where I talk on topics of the occult, philosophy, history, things that bring passion of mind and creativity, as well as occasionally I'll go places to journey and explore. But today I want to talk on a topic that is very profound, and it's kind of a shift in direction of this channel. As you know, the title, the name is Ezreal the Scribe, and a lot of the topics that I talk about, don't relate to a normal scribe per se. There are my writings, they are my sharing of gnosis, philosophy, thought, but when it comes to like writing other people's things down, it's a little different. So I wanted to be more authentic on this channel and authentic with my presentation. So when I say Ezreal the Scribe, it goes deeper into my own personal path working spiritually. For many years, I say many, but it's been half, if not most, of my life. I've been drawn to spirituality. I've been drawn to the idea of this divine current that flows through all things, that created all things, and it's partial to my upbringing. But at the same token, it's similar to a calling of sorts. And that early in my youth calling led me down different path workings, and I had thought about it one time becoming a pastor or something of that nature, but I didn't feel that calling. I felt called to the divine, having a relationship with God, as you would say it, and then in my exploration of different belief systems, I came across a group of witches and Wiccans. And in those studies and practices, it was like a deeper relationship with these divine archetypes. And I say archetypes, but in the belief systems of Wicca, it is the actual divine. The gods and goddesses are representations of that divine consciousness, that divine energy. And each deity has a role that's, that they are divine of. And if you look at it from a psychological perspective, which later down the road, studying psychology, Jungian psychology with the archetypes, we start to see how when you think of divine of something, you think of like the totality of it, that well of source of consciousness for whatever topic it is or whatever role it is. So when you're calling in that divine energy, you're connecting with it, you're connecting to the source of it all, which is its highest vibration or its lowest vibration, but its totality. And so as the years progressed, studying with that Wiccan group, I began, some would call it channeling, and some would call it like a medium, where you are able to connect on a deep level with these deities on a relationship scale, that you start to receive messages of wisdom, messages of guidance. And so from those early days, and this is like over since 2000, 1999, 2000, I started developing these abilities to have these messages, receive messages. And I don't often, if you've known me my entire life, I don't talk about stuff like that often. And it has led me to this point, though, that 15 years later, I'm using these tools that I developed back then to be able to continue that work of receiving messages, writing them down. And please, please, please don't start saying, oh, he's a prophet, he's a false prophet, blah, 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 blah. I'm not a prophet. Most of the messages I receive are about my own path, my own life. I do get bits of wisdom in the workings, which I do often share on here, because that should be heard, And so when I joined the Temple of Ascending Flame, became a full-time member, I was in a deep meditation with the deities of the temple, and that was when I was given the name Ezreal. And it's interesting because when it's a unique name, and then when I looked it up, it's the Hebrew name for scribe of God, and so basically scribe of the divine. And so when I put those skills of channeling along with writing down all the messages that I receive from the meditations, the workings, it just all correlated. And that's where I came up with this channel, Ezreal the Scribe, because it's one way to share the wisdom that's received, and to be able to share that with you all, and to honor my path, and to honor my calling. It's like it is a priesthood of sorts. It's a dedication to the divine, and respects, and with to the divine within myself, as well as to the divine in each other, to divine in all things, the source flow that flows through all creation. It's a deep respect for all things. And so with that said, this direction I want to head with these videos is to go over sigils and symbols, as sigils in the left-hand path, as well as the Temple of Ascending Flame. They're the keys to the divine currents, the keys to opening doors to flows of consciousness that are often unconscious, as well as keys to the spirit world. And you see petroglyph symbols of these spirals on rocks, and archaeologists believe that those were by shamans created to access the other world. And if you think of a spiral going, focusing on a spiral in a trance with either a plant medicine or just in a deep meditative trance, you're going within, you're going into that spiral. So it's not just a modern use, which I'll cover more in this video. So if you are interested in learning more, I highly welcome you to stay tuned. I'm going to be presenting more of these videos on the sigils, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, sigils are symbols used in magic and the occult to represent specific intentions or desires. They serve as a tool to focus the practitioner's will and manifest their goals. Occult symbols are visual representations used in various mystical, magical, and esoteric traditions. Occult symbols have been used since ancient times by civilizations such as the Egyptians, Greeks, and Celts. So think on this back in Egypt with the different symbols they use for their alphabet. Each of those symbols have meaning. These hieroglyphs have different symbolism than just the alphabet. There's a whole structure behind them, and that was thousands of years ago in Egypt. Then we can find in North America, as well as over in Australia with the Aboriginal groups, the pictographs or the petroglyphs. The petroglyphs that are on the cave walls that symbolize spirals or gateways to other realms, depending on those that translate the beliefs. And then the Celts, they had different symbols that represented things such as Bridget's cross, which looks very similar to the Aryan cross, but it's symbolized, to the goddess Bridget, or Saint Bridget later on, as depicted. Now, during the medieval period, sigils were often associated with alchemy and ceremonial magic. In the late 1500s, Edward Kelly and John Dee had channeled these angelic sigils and symbols of an Enochian alphabet and created the Enochian tradition that we see today. Now, they might not have set out to create a tradition, but it was later revived as such, and as you can still find their workings today. Now used in angelic sigils to speak to the divine. Now, in modern times, such as today, symbols and sigils are used in various spiritual and magical practices, including Wicca, Thelema, chaos magic, witchcraft, and is found in nearly almost every belief system. And I'll kind of touch on that here in a bit. Now, as an occult tool, the symbol or sigil is utilized by being charged with the energy of the practitioner. Now, to activate these sigils and symbols, one of the known methods is to anoint it with your blood, and the reason for that is it not only connects your energy to it, but it also, the blood has energy within it. So it's one easy way, and you don't have to do like a pinprick, like a drop. You don't have to do the Hollywood style, slice the hand and blood splatter everywhere. That's a waste. No, it's more so just having that little bit of a connection to the symbol or sigil that can activate it. Another way is to, if you're familiar with Reiki or energy work, you can project energy from the palms of your hand into the symbol. You can gaze at the sigil and symbol for a matter of time to allow that energy to flow from your body to it. That is another easy method to utilize to activate and charge that sigil. And then after it's activated, if you're performing a rite to connect with that sigil or symbol, you can either burn it afterwards, or you can bury it or place it in a significant location if you're creating a painting that is a sigil. And you can have that as a method of a consistent connection to that energy. Now, once you anoint or project your energy into it, the practitioner then releases the intention, trusting that the sigil or symbol will work to manifest their desire. So, again, that can be through burning, burying it, or basically releasing that energy that you're putting into it to create that effect. Or to just connect to the energy. If you're creating a painting, you're not going to want to burn that painting. You're going to want to have it set up to where you can consistently connect to that energy. And I will say, from my own practices, I ended up creating quite a few 8x10 sigils that you can put in a 3-ring binder. And I highly suggest getting something like this if you're working with different deities, different energies, unless you want to consistently connect to those energies. I was once living in a very small dwelling that pretty much it was a studio apartment where everything was open concept, and if I had any sigils on the wall, I could see it at all times. And my work desk was not too far away from where I had my sigils, and I decided to put all of them up on the wall, kind of like not just as tools but as artwork. And I was thinking, oh, this is cool. It's great art, which it is. I consider my sigils art, but at the same time, they have multifunctional tools. And I would be working, and then all of a sudden I would feel these different energetic sensations of cold and hot, and different things would happen, like TV turning on by itself, which is fine, but it's annoying when you're working. So things like that, or I would receive messages like a channel as I'm trying to work, and the energy was always very heavy in the room. And so one day I'm like, you know what, I need to clean up my space. So I started taking everything down, do what I normally do, get out the Clorox wipes, started cleaning everything. And I had bought a 3-ring binder, just to store papers and whatnot. So I thought, hey, I'll store them in that binder until I'm done cleaning. Well, I took them all down, put them in a binder, and immediately the energy was 10 times lighter in my room. And I was thinking, wow, I did a great job cleaning. But it dawned on me I was leaving gateways open on my wall. Each of those sigils are keys to realms of perception, realms of spirituality, realms of the divine. And so I basically had about 8 sigils up on a wall. That's 8 different doorways that spirits could come through and to my space. So it dawned on me, okay, I need to be more responsible. And so putting these sigils in, because they're 8x10, they fit easily into a 3-ring binder with those sleeves. And I only take them out now if I'm using them. And I do have sigil art, but it's not the same concept as saying having a divine sigil or a sigil dedicated to a deity up on the wall. So just be mindful of when you work with sigils to have them the same respect as you would any other tool of your working, and treat them. I would treat the sigil as you're treating a relic of the divine in a way. Just be mindful, and but going back to the foundations of sigils, creating a sigil is quite simple. The first step is to clearly define the intention or desire. So then the practitioner creates a unique symbol that represents that intention. And this can involve combining letters, shapes, and other symbols. In some traditions, the practitioner would write out the name of the intention or sentence, and then take out all the vowels. And what's left, those letters, they would create a sigil. And it can be activated again through various means. Charging it with your energy through meditation, visualization, or ritual rites. And then again, you can always anoint it with a pinprick of your blood. Now, sigils can represent many things, but to some, there are 3 primary sigils out there in modern times. 1, those that are created by individuals for personal use. 2, those that are associated with astrology. And then the third one represents specific deities, entities, or traditional currents of energy. Now, Peter Carroll in the 1980s is a foundational figure in the chaos magic tradition, known for popularizing the use of sigils in his seminal works like Liber Null and Psychonaut. He taught that the sigils work by stimulating the will of subconsciously, bypassing the conscious mind to manifest desires. Carroll's approach emphasizes practical experimental techniques, especially sigils, to enhance magical abilities and belief manipulation. Now, Peter Carroll, along with Ray Sherman, is credited with founding the Chaos Magic movement, but Carroll introduced sigil magic as a central practicing technique within chaos magic. He stressed the importance of the magical mind and psychological techniques to achieve desired outcomes through mental discipline and belief experimentation. Carroll's philosophy is that sigils are a method to stimulate, again, the subconscious will, allowing the will to work through conscious interference. His writings advocate a pragmatic and experimental approach to magic, encouraging practitioners to find what works for them. The methods he outlined allow even beginning magicians to access their inner power and advance their magical practice. And it goes back to a sigil I created where the pyramid of manifestation, and that is the top of the pyramid is a golden fire of knowledge, the fire of Lucifer, the gnosis of sending flame of knowledge, and that's to know. Then the left flame On the bottom left corner is bluish silver, and that's Hecate's flame of will, and that is the utilization of will. And then the right bottom corner flame is a reddish, orangish reddish flame, and that is Lilith's flame of passion and desire. So you have to have the knowledge, the will, and the desire to create. And then that center circle within the pyramid is the black flame of intention. And as with all, if you look at any candle flame, at the very closest to the wick is a black flame. And that is the intention ignited that radiates outward once utilizing knowledge, will, and desire to create. That is just another symbolic use of a sigil. Now, many other symbols out there are very popular, and one that is often misunderstood is the pentagram. Now, the pentagram is a 5-pointed star often used to represent the elements. You got earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, as well as protection. The pentagram is often seen on sheriff badges or in the police, and it's interesting that the 5-pointed star, when inside a circle, represents an authority over the elements of earth, air, fire, water, and spirit. So it makes sense that the law enforcement would use this sigil as their emblem to represent their authority over the elements of society and the laws to enforce them. Now, the inverted pentagram is often seen as associated with darkness and evil, which, although said cultures have taken this to be true, the inverted pentagram in Wicca and other occult paths represent going within, understanding the work of the shadow, the unconscious realm of self. And while the upward pentagram is the conscious, earthly, and celestial realms, rituals have been created over time using the sigil for going, when it's inverted, to go within, to dive deep into the under thoughts of self. And for that reason, because the upright pentagram is used for protection, rituals have been created over time to use this to conjure and banish, as well as utilizing for pathwork and going within. Now, another very popular symbol that has been used for thousands of years is, of course, the Ankh. Many believe that the Christian cross originally came from this depiction of the Ankh, although I'll cover a little bit later more on some of the symbolism of where the cross came from. But in ancient Egypt, the Ankh symbolized representing life and immortality. It had that cross of self with the loop of the spirit, and then along with the Ankh in Egypt, there was the Eye of Horus, which was a symbol of protection, royal power, and good health. And so that was a very popular symbol back in Egypt, but also in modern times. You can still find the Ankh used in many subcultures and beliefs. Now, another very widespread symbol in the Jewish belief system, as well as many alchemical, is the hexagram, also known as the Star of David. It's used in various magical traditions to represent the union of opposites. So, for that reason, it's often found in alchemy, as well as Jewish mysticism and many other occult traditions. Now, the use of snakes and the realm of symbols has been a common feature in many different traditions, Egyptian, Mayan, Middle Eastern, as well as over in Asia. And the serpent eating its own tail as symbolizes the eternity and the cyclical nature of the universe, which is Ouroboros. If you've ever seen this symbol, it's the serpent in a circle biting its own tail. And as the serpent sheds its own skin and is consistently feeding upon itself, it represents to some, the immortal soul's rebirth through life and reincarnation, and it could go on and on and on and on. But there's many different ideas and thoughts on Ouroboros. And then in the scientific world, we also see a lot of elemental symbols, and many cold symbols represent the classical elements like earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, and their corresponding qualities, as well as in alchemy with Mercury, and different planetary energies to represent different phases, as well as astrological and alchemical symbols. So it's interesting that many that we find, in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, even 1800s, different uses of symbols to represent different undercurrent occult meanings. And one of the primary reasons for that is society during those times were fairly harsh against any belief that was against the church doctrine. And so any form of magic or occult or witchcraft was considered a crime, even to the death. And many people died fighting for their beliefs, to practice and to honor their own traditions. And that is why you find a lot of alchemical formulas in art. You find a lot of scientific meaning in certain paintings to represent different things. It was one to preserve the knowledge. The alchemical formulas within the artwork would preserve the knowledge as well as hide it in secrecy for those that are truly the adepts and students of the work. There was a belief at one time that the misuse of the occult materials could cause catastrophic issues in the world. So to know, to dare, to will, to keep silent. That was a way of, one, protecting yourself, and preserving and hiding the knowledge. Whereas nowadays, since we live in a very diverse culture that is based on the freedom of free speech, we are very fortunate to be able to speak on these things. I'm lucky to speak on these things right now without going to jail on it. To be able to talk on this without fearing for my life. Waking up the next day with the village with pitchforks coming after me. That would be a nightmare. So other mystical and religious symbols that are out there, symbols from various mystical and religious traditions, such as the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Christian cross, are used to convey spiritual truths as well as to represent different things. The Christian cross. The cross is, as a symbol of Christianity, gained widespread use after Emperor Constantine's conversion in the 4th century CE. While the symbol itself has ancient roots, it was not initially a central or widely adapted emblem of Christianity, especially not in the first 300 years after Jesus' death. Early Christians sometimes used the T shape, or tau, or the starogram, overlap of Greek letters rho and tau, as early forms of the cross. Early Christians used the sign of the cross facing a T shape on their forehead, lips, and breast as a way to identify themselves or as a prayer gesture. Constantine's conversion and legalization of Christianity in the 4th century CE led to the cross becoming a prominent symbol that we see today. The cross shape itself has roots in pre-Christian and non-Christian cultures, including the Egyptian Ankh symbol, as I was stating before. The cross in the time of Jesus was a tool of Roman execution associated with pain and shame. Its adoption as a Christian symbol transformed it into a representation of Christ's sacrifice and victory over death. Early depictions of the cross in Christian art were varied, with some early examples representing the starogram or figures with outstretched arms, while the Latin and Greek cross forms became more common later. So it's interesting that a tool used for execution and destruction became one of the most popularized symbols this world has ever known, and created a movement based on not though the cross itself, but the symbolization of what it means to the believers. That the resurrection after the belief that one can overcome death, and through that path. So it's quite fascinating. Now, another symbol that is very popular and widespread is a symbol that's different than the cross. It's the symbol of Baphomet. And Baphomet is often, in modern times, associated with the Church of Satan, created by Anton LaVey back in the 60s to represent a emblem of rebellion and a philosophy that followed with it. And the symbolism behind the Baphomet is structured for the church to symbolize the values and the structures within it. And although associated with the Church of Satan, the symbol or sigil Baphomet, which features an inverted pentagram, a goat's head, and many other features, represents to that church an agent of rebellion, the philosophy and values of that vessel. When the sigil of Baphomet, which is often misunderstood, and modern culture was something way different to those back in, say, back in the 1800s. In the context of alchemy, per the book by Eliphas Levi, Dogme ut Ritual de la Haute Magi, Baphomet, particularly the image created by Eliphas Levi, is a symbol of the great work, the process of spiritual and material transformation, as well as the union of opposites. It features such as female breasts, the male caduceus, the torch wings, and the words salve et coagula, to dissolve and to coagulate. It represents the integration of spiritual and material realms, the duality of human nature, and the continuous cycle of spiritual purification necessary for enlightenment. So Baphomet's androgynous form, blending male and female characteristics, symbolizes that unification of dualities like spirit and matter, good and evil, male and female energies, which is a central theme in alchemy. And then the word salve et coagula, the words etched on its arms, means to dissolve and to coagulate. These terms represent the alchemical process of breaking down, dissolving what does not serve, and then combining, coagulating matter to achieve refinement and transformation, which is mirrored in the spiritual journey of alchemy. Now, the torch above its head symbolizes divine enlightenment, spiritual knowledge, and intelligence. The caduceus on its abdomen, a staff with two intertwined serpents, and often wings, represent the integration and balance of the spiritual and physical realms. The wings symbolize spirituality, the soul's ascension, and the volatile element of the alchemical process. The goat's head and animal features represents the material, earthly, and corporal aspects of the human condition, the need to be integrated and transcended in the great work. The upright pentagram on the forehead symbolizes the mastery of the spiritual over the material and the ascent of humanity towards higher consciousness. So Baphomet serves as a visual metaphor for the entire alchemical and spiritual journey of transformation. It was a whole alchemical formula in the artwork of this figure. It embodies the complex and paradoxical nature of existence, requiring the practitioner to confront and integrate their own contradictions to achieve balance, wisdom, and enlightenment. So, looking at that, the symbol of Baphomet in that type of way back in the 1800s and possibly even further back, to secretly hide that alchemical formula, because that was considered heresy back then. Some would consider it heresy today, but it's a form of consistently cultivating and changing and merging the spiritual and the physical to ascend as a person, to become a better person. And so, and some used it, to achieve wealth and power, which that's where the whole conspiracy regarding the Knights Templars, that they use this formula to achieve the Philosopher's Stone and to gain power over things. But that's a whole different story. But far as a symbol and sigil, that's a very powerful one. Now, in alchemy, the Star of David, which is the hexagram, it symbolizes the union of opposing forces, such as fire and water. As the upward pointing triangle represents fire and the downward pointing one represents water, combined they represent the reconciliation of opposites and the harmonious balance of the four classical elements: fire, water, earth, and air, symbolizing the totality of existence, of the everything that exists. This use of the hexagram in alchemical processes predates its widespread adaptation in the Jewish symbol by many centuries. The hexagram is a comprehensive symbol representing, again, the four classical elements: fire, water, earth, and air, and has been used for various cultures dating back to the Greco-Roman thought. The symbol was also known in the Islamic world as the Seal of Solomon, a name that also appears in some magical context, that his ring contained this symbol. While its use in Jewish texts and contexts for some mystical purposes existed earlier, the symbol's strong identification with Judaism developed later, particularly from the 17th century onward, and was cemented with the adaptation by the Zionist movement in the late 19th century. And to this day, you can see this symbol on I believe it's the Israeli flag. Now, in modern left-hand path spirituality and groups such as the Temple of Ascending Flame, sigils become keys to unlocking doors to the spirit world. Sigils dedicated to the Sephiroth and Qliphoth give way to spheres within those two trees. Deity sigils connected to different aspects of the divine or the infernal connect the practitioner to those currents and which they represent. A common practice in that is anointing the sigil with a drop of your blood and the evoking or invoking the deity with an intention. To evoke, the practitioner would often anoint the sigil and then have a black mirror to scry into to connect with that spirit. And the mirror would represent the void that they would be peering into to connect to that spirit. Now, to invoke, the practitioner seeks to allow the current to flow through them in communion with that deity. Now, this would involve a partial invocation where the practitioner can still function and write down messages given, or a full invocation where the practitioner would lay down in order for the deity to help them astrally travel to the spirit world for information or whatever intention was requested. Now, this can be found in other witchcraft practices such as Wicca, but in the left-hand path, the belief is that all these currents reside within us, but they just lay dormant until awoken and brought from the unconscious to the conscious. Now, sigils and symbols have functionality in occult practices and are used in nearly all belief systems in some form. If you liked this short presentation on sigils and symbols, I do invite you to like and subscribe, as this is part 1 in a series. The parts to come will be dedicated to single sigils or symbols. So I'll dedicate each video to this one symbol or a sigil. I do thank you for watching this video and taking the time to hear about sigils and symbols. It's become a practicing tool in my work and a passion of, I love creating sigils, painting them. But, with that said, as a torch-bearing priest, caretaker to the covenant of the sacred flame, scribe to the divine, I share in service their gnosis and wisdom in honor of them. I wish you all safe travels. Until next time.